The wedding music stopped the second the little girl screamed, "Daddy!" Every guest turned in shock. A waiter had accidentally slammed into her chair, causing juice to spill across her white dress. The little girl burst into tears, and before anyone could react, the groom exploded in anger. "Are you blind?" Daniel shouted at the waiter. "Do you even know how much this wedding costs?" The terrified waiter kept apologizing, but Daniel wasn't done. Then his eyes landed on the quiet man beside the crying child, a single dad in a simple black suit. Instantly, Daniel's face twisted with disgust. "Oh, now I understand," he sneered loudly. "You're one of those guests."
The hall became silent. Lucian slowly stood up beside his daughter. Calm, quiet, unreadable. He gently cleaned the tears from the little girl's cheeks. "It's okay, princess." But Daniel suddenly laughed. "You should leave," he said coldly. "This wedding is for important people." Some guests chuckled quietly. Others pulled out their phones. Drama at a rich wedding always entertained people. Lucian ignored the insults and continued fixing his daughter's dress. That somehow made Daniel even angrier. "I'm talking to you," he snapped. "Or can't you hear me?" Still calm, Lucian finally looked up. And the moment their eyes met, something strange happened. A security guard near the entrance suddenly froze. His face lost all color. The champagne tray slipped from his shaking hands and crashed onto the floor. Crash! Everyone jumped. The guard stared directly at Lucian like he had seen a ghost. "No," he whispered fearfully. Another guard looked over. Then he froze too. The entire atmosphere changed instantly. Guests looked around nervously. Daniel frowned. What is wrong with everybody tonight? The little girl tugged Lucian's sleeve. "Daddy, why are they scared?" Lucian gave a small smile. "They're not scared of me." But that was a lie. Because near the entrance, 3 tattooed men in black suits had just entered the wedding hall. The moment they saw Lucian, their heads lowered immediately. Respectfully, fearfully. Like soldiers standing before a king. One of them whispered nervously, "The boss is here." A woman near the dance floor gasped loudly, "Oh my God." Another guest slowly stepped backward. People were beginning to recognize him. Not as a poor single father, not as some random guest, but as Lucian Moretti, the most feared mafia boss in the city. The man people called the Ghost, because enemies who crossed him were never seen again. Daniel laughed awkwardly, still confused. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" Nobody answered him. Even the bride looked horrified now. Her hands trembled violently as she stared at Lucian. "I thought he was dead," she whispered. Then, suddenly, one of the tattooed men rushed forward. "Boss," he said urgently, "we have a problem." Lucian's expression darkened instantly. "What happened?" The man swallowed hard. "They found out your daughter is here." The little girl looked up innocently. "Daddy?" But before Lucian could answer, the wedding hall lights suddenly went black. Screams exploded everywhere. Women cried. Guests ducked under tables. Glasses shattered across the floor. Then, a red laser dot appeared on the little girl's chest. Sniper. Lucian's eyes turned cold for the first time that night. Deadly cold. And in that terrifying moment, every person inside the wedding hall realized one thing. The quiet single dad they mocked was the only thing standing between them and death. If this chapter shocked you already, wait until the city discovers why someone wants Lucian's daughter dead. Subscribe now, because the next chapter gets even more dangerous. And comment below, what would you do if you discovered the quiet man at a wedding was secretly the most feared mafia boss alive? The red laser stayed on the little girl's chest, perfectly still, perfectly deadly. Screams filled the dark wedding hall as guests dropped to the floor in panic. "Sniper! Everybody get down!" Tables flipped over. Wine glasses shattered. People crawled across the marble floor, crying in fear. But Lucian Moretti did not move. Not even once. His daughter looked up at him innocently. "Daddy, what's happening?" Lucian calmly removed his suit jacket and covered her small body. "Close your eyes, princess." The tattooed men around him instantly pulled out hidden guns. Daniel's face turned white. Oh my God. The bride grabbed his arm tightly. "I told you something was wrong!" Then, bang! A sniper shot blasted through the giant wedding window. Glass exploded everywhere. Women screamed louder. One rich guest collapsed unconscious from fear, but the bullet never touched the little girl, because Lucian had already moved. Fast, faster than anyone expected. 1 second, he stood beside his daughter. The next, he had flipped the entire banquet table over them as cover. The sniper bullet slammed into the thick table instead. Thud. The room fell into shocked silence. Even the Mafia men stared. One whispered nervously, "He still moves like a monster." Lucian crouched beside his daughter calmly. "You okay?" The little girl nodded with trembling lips. "Yes, Daddy." Outside the wedding hall, black SUVs suddenly surrounded the building from every direction. More armed men stepped out. Not Lucian's men. Enemies. Daniel backed away in terror. Who are these people? Nobody answered him, because at that exact moment, the emergency lights turned on. Dim red lighting filled the hall like blood. And standing near the broken entrance doors was a tall man wearing black gloves. Slowly clapping. Clap. 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 Lucian's eyes narrowed instantly. The man smiled coldly. "Well done, ghost." The entire hall became silent. Even Lucian's own men looked nervous now, because they recognized him immediately. Victor Kane, one of the deadliest assassins in the underworld, a man famous for wiping out entire mafia families. Daniel looked completely confused. Ghost? Victor smiled wider and pointed directly at Lucian. "You people really don't know who's sitting among you tonight?" Nobody breathed. Victor laughed darkly.
He pointed at Lucian again? Once started a mafia war that left over 300 men dead in one night. Gasps filled the room. The bride covered her mouth in horror. Daniel stumbled backward. "No." Victor kept smiling. "And tonight," he continued, "I'm here to finish what we started years ago." Lucian slowly stood up. His face showed no fear, only cold silence. "Using a child as bait?" Lucian asked quietly. Victor shrugged. "You disappeared for years. We needed a way to bring the ghost back." Then Victor's eyes shifted toward the little girl hiding behind Lucian. And suddenly, his smile vanished. "You know," he said softly, "her mother screamed the same way before she died." Everything stopped. The air, the noise, the fear. Lucian's daughter looked up slowly. "Daddy?" What does he mean?
Lucian said nothing. But for the first time, true rage appeared in his eyes. His Mafia men immediately stepped backward, terrified, because they knew something the wedding guests did not. Lucian Moretti was most dangerous when he became silent. Victor smirked. "Yes," he whispered. "Now you remember me." Then he pulled out a detonator. Click.
Several guests screamed instantly. Bombs.
Daniel nearly collapsed.
You planted bombs in my wedding?
Victor ignored him completely. His eyes never left Lucian. "Choose carefully, Ghost," he said coldly. "Your daughter or everyone inside this building." And then the countdown began. 0059, 0058, 0057. The entire wedding hall exploded into panic. If you think Lucian will choose the guests over his daughter, you have no idea who the ghost really is. Subscribe now, because the next chapter reveals the dark truth about Lucian's past. And comment below, should Lucian save the wedding guests or protect only his daughter? The countdown echoed through the wedding hall like a death clock. Guests shoved each other toward the exits in pure panic. "Move! Get out of the way!" A woman fell to the floor crying as people stepped over her heels. One old man fainted beside the dessert table. Daniel grabbed Victor Kane angrily. "You psycho! Turn it off!" Victor punched him hard across the face. Daniel crashed into a chair. Blood spilled from his mouth instantly. "Stay out of this," Victor said coldly. "You rich idiots were never the target." Meanwhile, Lucian stood completely still beside his daughter, watching, thinking, calculating. His little girl held his hand tightly. "Daddy, are we gonna die?" Lucian slowly knelt beside her. "No, princess. But you promised no more bad guys."
Those words hit harder than any bullet. For a brief second, the feared ghost looked like nothing more than a tired father, carrying years of pain. Then he gently touched her cheek. "I know."
Victor smiled darkly. "What's wrong, Ghost?" he mocked. "Too weak to kill now?" Lucian finally looked up, and every Mafia man inside the hall immediately felt fear crawl down their spine, because his eyes had changed. Cold, empty, deadly. The ghost was back. Lucian stood slowly, then removed his wedding ring chain from around his neck. The entire hall noticed it. A silver ring hanging beside his heart. His dead wife's ring. He kissed it once, then placed it gently inside his daughter's small hands. "Close your eyes," he told her softly. The little girl obeyed immediately. Victor laughed. "There he is." Suddenly, Lucian moved. Fast. Before anyone could blink, bang! One of Victor's men flew across the hall after Lucian smashed a wine bottle into his throat. Crash! Another attacker raised his gun. Snap! Lucian twisted the man's wrist so violently the bone broke instantly. The gun fired into the ceiling. Guests screamed louder. The Mafia men watching were stunned. He's fighting bare-handed? No weapons? He's insane. Victor's smile slowly disappeared, because this was not the broken father he expected. This was the monster who once ruled the city. One attacker rushed Lucian from behind. Big mistake. Lucian grabbed the man's face and slammed him straight into a marble pillar. Blood splattered across the wedding decorations. The room exploded into chaos. Daniel stared in horror. That quiet guy is doing this? The bride whispered shakily, "I warned you." Victor suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at the little girl. Everything stopped. Even Lucian froze. Victor smirked. "That's enough." The little girl trembled under the table. "Daddy!" Lucian slowly raised his hands. The entire hall watched silently. Victor stepped closer. "You disappeared after your wife died," he said softly. "People thought grief broke you." Lucian said nothing. "But I knew better," Victor continued. "You were hiding." He leaned closer. "Tell them the truth, Ghost." Still silence. Victor smiled cruelly. "Tell them why your wife died." The bride suddenly looked terrified. "No," she whispered. Victor laughed loudly. "She died because someone betrayed Lucian's location that night." Gasps filled the hall. Lucian's jaw tightened. Victor pointed slowly toward the wedding guests. "And the traitor?" He smiled wider. "Is inside this wedding." Instant panic spread instantly. People backed away from each other. "What? Who is it?" Daniel looked furious. "You brought this madness to my wedding?" Lucian ignored him completely. His eyes scanned the room carefully, watching, hunting. Then, suddenly, his daughter pointed toward someone. A beautiful woman standing near the stage. The bride's older sister, Sophia. The little girl spoke innocently. "Daddy, that lady is crying." Sophia's entire body froze. And for the first time that night, Lucian looked truly shocked. Because years ago, Sophia was the woman who saved his life. The next chapter changes everything when Lucian discovers the woman who once protected him may have secretly destroyed his family. Subscribe now, because the betrayal is far darker than you think. And comment below. Do you think Sophia betrayed Lucian? Or is someone framing her? The countdown kept ticking, but Lucian no longer looked at the bombs. He looked only at Sophia. The bride's older sister stood frozen near the stage, tears running down her face. She looked like she had just seen a ghost from hell. Lucian's daughter held his hand tightly. "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" Lucian did not answer, because memories were crashing into him like bullets. Rain, blood, sirens, and Sophia screaming at him years ago. "Run, Lucian! They found you!" Back then, she had saved his life. She had helped him escape the night his enemies attacked his home. The same night his wife died. The same night his world collapsed. Now she stood here again, at this wedding, crying. Victor Kane smiled darkly as he watched Lucian's face. "Oh, yes," Victor whispered. "Now you remember." Sophia shook her head desperately. "No, Lucian, please." Victor suddenly grabbed her arm violently and dragged her forward. "Tell him," Victor ordered coldly. Sophia trembled. "I didn't have a choice." Lucian's expression became unreadable. Daniel looked completely lost. "Somebody explain what's happening!" The bride suddenly snapped at him. "Shut up, Daniel!" Everyone turned in shock. Even Daniel froze. The bride pointed at Lucian with shaking hands. "That man is Lucian Moretti." The entire hall exploded into terrified whispers. "The ghost? No way! I thought he disappeared years ago! Oh my God. People rushed farther away from Lucian like he carried death itself. But Lucian never looked away from Sophia. Victor checked the timer. 001. 006. He smiled. You know what's funny, Ghost? Victor leaned closer. She cried the same way your wife cried before the bullets hit her. Sophia collapsed to her knees. Stop! Lucian's daughter looked confused and scared. Daddy, who's Mommy? The question hit Lucian harder than anything else that night. The room suddenly felt silent, heavy, painful. Lucian slowly knelt beside his daughter. Your mommy was kind, he said softly. She loved you very much. The little girl smiled weakly. Like you? For the first time, Lucian almost broke emotionally. But then, Victor laughed loudly. How touching. He raised his gun toward Sophia's head. Too bad she helped kill her. Gasps exploded across the hall. Sophia cried harder. I swear, I didn't know they would kill her. Lucian's eyes darkened instantly. Victor grinned. She gave us your location, Ghost. Daniel backed away slowly. This is insane. Victor ignored him. Sophia thought we only wanted your Mafia empire. He leaned close to Lucian again. But your wife protected your daughter. Silence. Cold silence. And my men filled her body with bullets. The bride burst into tears. Several guests covered their mouths in horror. Lucian's daughter looked up innocently. Daddy, what are bullets? Nobody answered, because Lucian's face had completely changed. No emotion, no sadness, no mercy. Just death. The Mafia men around him immediately looked terrified. One whispered, "Oh no," because they remembered this face. This was the same expression Lucian had the night he wiped out an entire Mafia family. Victor noticed it too. But instead of fear, he smiled. Yes, he whispered excitedly. That's the ghost I remember. Victor raised the detonator. Goodbye, everybody. Click. But nothing happened. Victor frowned instantly. What? The countdown stopped. Frozen. The hall became silent. Then suddenly, a voice echoed from the speakers above. Cold, calm, dangerous. Did you really think I came here unprepared? Victor's face lost all color because he recognized the voice immediately. Not Lucian. Someone else. Someone far more dangerous than expected. Then, the wedding doors slowly opened, and over 20 armed Mafia soldiers walked inside, all wearing the symbol of the Moretti family. At the center stood a tall, older man with gray hair and black gloves. The entire underworld feared him. Enzo Moretti, Lucian's father, and the real king of the Mafia empire. The next chapter reveals why Lucian left the Mafia, and why his own father may be the most dangerous man in the city. Subscribe now, because the Moretti family secrets are about to explode. And comment below, who scares you more right now, Lucian or his father, Enzo? The wedding hall became so quiet, people could hear the chandelier shaking above them. Enzo Moretti slowly walked across the broken glass floor like he owned the entire world. Because in many ways, he did. His black gloves were spotless. His gray suit looked perfect. And his cold eyes carried the kind of power that made grown men lower their heads instantly. Even Victor Kane stepped backward nervously. That alone terrified the guests, because moments ago, Victor looked unstoppable. Now he suddenly looked afraid. Enzo glanced around the destroyed wedding hall calmly. "Terrible decoration choices," he said dryly. Nobody laughed.
The armed Mafia soldiers behind him spread across the room with military precision. Every exit was blocked. Daniel nearly collapsed. "We're trapped." The bride whispered shakily, "No, we're surrounded." Lucian stood completely still. His daughter peeked from behind him curiously. "Daddy, who's the old man?" The entire room froze. Several Mafia men looked horrified. One even closed his eyes. But Enzo suddenly smiled softly.
A real smile. Something nobody in the underworld had seen in years. He walked toward the little girl slowly, then knelt in front of her. "I'm your grandfather," he said gently. The little girl blinked. "You're old." Several Mafia soldiers instantly looked away to hide their reactions. Victor looked stunned. Lucian's daughter tilted her head innocently. "Why do all the scary people listen to you?"
Enzo chuckled quietly. "Because they make smart decisions." Lucian finally spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Enzo stood slowly. "And let my granddaughter die?" he asked coldly. "Never." The warmth vanished from his face instantly. Now he looked terrifying again. His eyes shifted toward Victor, and the temperature inside the room seemed to drop. Victor forced a smile. "Mr. Moretti." Enzo walked closer calmly. "You disappointed me tonight." Victor swallowed hard. "You think bringing your soldiers scares me?" Enzo stopped directly in front of him. "No," he replied softly. Then, bang! A gunshot exploded through the hall. Victor screamed and collapsed to the floor, clutching his knee. Guests shrieked in horror. Nobody even saw who fired. Enzo calmly adjusted his gloves. That was the warning shot. Pure terror spread across the room. Daniel whispered shakily, "He shot him without blinking." The bride grabbed his arm tightly. "Stop talking before we die."
Victor groaned in pain. "You can't kill me," he hissed. "You still need information." Enzo looked bored. "I already know who betrayed my son." Every eye turned toward Sophia instantly. Sophia cried harder. "It wasn't me!" Lucian stared at her silently. Enzo's expression darkened. "She did betray you," he said coldly. Sophia shook violently, but not willingly. The room became silent again. Enzo slowly looked toward the guests. "Years ago," he began, "our enemies kidnapped Sophia's younger brother." Sophia covered her face crying. "They told her to give Lucian's location, or watch her brother die." Daniel frowned. "So she chose herself over him?" "No!" Sophia screamed. Everyone jumped. "They sent me proof they were torturing him." She looked at Lucian desperately. "I thought they only wanted your Mafia money. I didn't know they planned to attack your family." Lucian's jaw tightened. Sophia collapsed fully onto the floor. "I tried to warn your wife." Her voice broke completely. "But I was too late." Silence. Heavy silence. Even the guests looked emotional now. Lucian's daughter tugged his sleeve gently. "Daddy, Why is everybody crying? Lucian looked down at her innocent face, and for the first time that night, real pain appeared in his eyes. Before he could answer, one of Enzo's soldiers suddenly shouted, "Boss!" Everybody turned.
A sniper laser appeared again, this time directly on Enzo's forehead. Then another laser appeared, and another, and another. More than 20 red laser dots suddenly covered the wedding hall. Guests screamed instantly. Enzo's soldiers raised their weapons. Victor began laughing from the floor. "You're too late," he coughed. "They're already here." Lucian's eyes narrowed dangerously because he recognized the symbol tattooed on Victor's neck. The Black Serpents. The deadliest cartel in the country. A group so brutal, even Mafia families feared them. Then, the windows exploded inward. Crash! Masked gunmen stormed the wedding hall from every direction, automatic weapons raised. And at the center of them all stood a woman in red high heels holding a silver pistol. Beautiful, deadly, smiling. She pointed the gun directly at Lucian's daughter. Then she said the one sentence that froze Lucian's blood. "Hello again, Lucian. Did you miss your wife's sister?" The next chapter reveals the woman nobody knew existed and why she may be more dangerous than every Mafia boss combined. Subscribe now because the wedding just became a war zone. And comment below. Do you think Lucian's wife's sister is a villain or something much worse? The masked gunmen flooded the wedding hall like wolves. Guests screamed and dropped behind tables as bullets pointed in every direction. But nobody looked more shocked than Lucian. Because the woman standing before him was supposed to be dead. She wore a blood-red dress, black gloves, silver heels, and in her hand rested a polished pistol aimed directly at his daughter. She smiled slowly. "Still staring, Lucian?" Lucian's voice turned deadly quiet. "Isabella." The bride whispered in confusion. "You know her?" Sophia suddenly looked terrified beyond words. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The little girl peeked from behind Lucian innocently. "Daddy, who's the angry lady?" The woman's smile softened for 1 second when she looked at the child. Then it vanished again. "I'm family," she answered coldly. The entire room froze. Daniel blinked repeatedly. "What kind of family are you people?" Nobody answered him, because Lucian could not stop staring at Isabella, his wife's younger sister, the woman who vanished the same night his wife died, the woman everyone believed had been murdered. And now, she stood here, leading the Black Serpents cartel. Victor Kane laughed painfully from the floor. "You finally understand now, Ghost." Isabella stepped over broken glass slowly. Her red heels clicked across the floor like warning shots. Click, click, click. "You disappeared for years after Elena died," Isabella said coldly, "while I suffered alone." Lucian's jaw tightened. "I searched for your body." She laughed bitterly. "My body?" Suddenly her eyes filled with rage. "Your father sold me to the cartel." The room exploded into shocked whispers. Enzo Moretti's expression darkened instantly. "Careful," he warned. Isabella pointed her gun at him immediately. "No," she snapped. "You be careful." The tension became unbearable. Even the Mafia soldiers looked nervous now, because nobody expected this. Lucian slowly stepped forward. "You're alive." For one brief second, pain crossed Isabella's face. "You should have protected my sister." Those words hit like a knife. Lucian's daughter looked confused. "Daddy, who's Elena?" Lucian closed his eyes briefly. "Your mother." The little girl blinked. The entire hall became emotional instantly. But Isabella's face hardened again. "She died because of this family," she hissed while glaring at Enzo. Enzo remained calm. "Your sister chose Lucian." "She chose love!" Isabella screamed. Her voice echoed through the hall. "And you punished her for it!"
Daniel whispered to the bride, "This family is completely insane."
The bride nodded slowly. "Told you?" Suddenly, Isabella pointed at Lucian again. "But you!" Her eyes filled with betrayal. "You abandoned everything after Elena died." Lucian stared back silently. "You left me with monsters!" The masked cartel soldiers around her tightened their grips on their weapons. The little girl suddenly stepped out from behind Lucian. Everyone panicked instantly. "Princess?" Lucian began. But the child walked straight toward Isabella fearlessly. The entire hall stopped breathing. Even Isabella looked stunned. The little girl tilted her head innocently. "Your mommy's sister?" Isabella slowly lowered her gun. Just a little. "Yes." The little girl smiled softly. "Daddy cries when he looks at Mommy's pictures." Lucian froze. Several guests looked emotional instantly.
The child continued innocently. "He thinks I don't hear him at night." Lucian's face tightened painfully. The little girl looked up at Isabella again. "Did Mommy like flowers too?" Something inside Isabella broke. Her gun lowered completely. Tears filled her eyes for the first time. Because the little girl looked exactly like Elena. Same eyes. Same smile. Victor suddenly shouted angrily, "Isabella!" Everyone jumped. Victor pointed furiously at Lucian. "He destroyed your sister's life! Kill him already!" The emotional moment vanished instantly. Isabella's face turned cold again. Then, slowly, she raised her pistol once more. But not at Lucian. At Enzo. "You ruined all of us," she whispered. Enzo's soldiers instantly aimed their guns. The cartel aimed back. More than 50 weapons filled the hall. One wrong move, and everyone dies. Then suddenly, Lucian's daughter walked between them. Directly between the guns. The entire room panicked. "Move the child!"
But the little girl simply looked around innocently, then asked the most dangerous question possible. If everybody loved Mommy, then why did everybody let her die? Silence. Pure silence. Nobody could answer her. Not Lucian, not Isabella, not Enzo. Because deep down, every single one of them carried guilt. And in that heartbreaking moment, a phone suddenly rang inside Lucian's pocket.
One ringtone, one call, and the second he saw the caller ID, his entire face changed. Cold. Dangerously cold. Because only one person used that number. A man Lucian believed died years ago. The man who ordered Elena's murder.
The next chapter reveals the shocking truth about who really killed Lucian's wife and why the mastermind has been hiding in the shadows all along. Subscribe now because the betrayal is about to destroy everyone. And comment below, who do you think is truly responsible for Elena's death? Enzo, Isabella, or someone else entirely? The phone kept ringing. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Lucian stared at the screen like he had just seen a ghost crawl out of a grave. Unknown number. But he recognized it instantly. Because years ago, that exact number sent him one final message after Elena died. She begged before she died. Lucian's daughter tugged his sleeve softly. "Daddy?" He answered without looking away from the phone. "Stay behind me." Then he accepted the call. Slowly. The entire wedding hall remained silent enough to hear static from the speaker. Then, a voice laughed softly. "Well, look at you, ghost!" Lucian's eyes darkened instantly. Noah. Gasps spread across the room. Even Enzo looked genuinely shocked for the first time that night. Victor Kane's smile disappeared completely. "No," Victor whispered. "That's impossible." The voice laughed again. "Oh, Victor, you really thought you were important?"
Victor's face turned pale. "You said you were dead. And you believed me." The entire hall realized something horrifying. Victor was never the real mastermind. He was just a pawn. Lucian tightened his grip on the phone. "You murdered my wife." "No," Noah corrected calmly. "I punished betrayal." Isabella screamed angrily. "You slaughtered my sister!" Noah ignored her completely. Instead, he spoke softly to Lucian. "Tell me something. Did Elena scream your name before the bullets hit her?" Lucian's Mafia soldiers instantly backed away, terrified, because they saw the rage building inside him. Raw, violent, uncontrollable. The ghost was losing control. Lucian's daughter looked scared now. "Daddy?" Noah chuckled through the phone. "Oh, is that the child?" Lucian's face became murderous. "If you mention her again..." "What?" Noah mocked. "You'll kill me?" Then his voice suddenly became darker. "You should have stayed hidden, Lucian." Click.
The call ended, and 1 second later, boom! The entire wedding hall shook violently. Guests screamed as part of the ceiling exploded above them. Dust and debris crashed everywhere. "It's a bomb! Run!" More explosions thundered outside. Boom! 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 The Black Serpent soldiers rushed toward the windows in panic. One shouted, "We're under attack!" Even Isabella looked confused now. This wasn't my plan. Enzo's expression hardened instantly. Noah's here. Lucian grabbed his daughter immediately. "Everybody get down!" Another explosion ripped through the parking lot outside. Cars burst into flames. The wedding hall transformed into a battlefield. Bullets suddenly sprayed through the windows. Rat-a-tat-a-tat.
Guests screamed and crawled across the floor. One cartel soldier fell instantly. Blood splattered across the wedding cake. Daniel nearly lost his mind. "Why is this happening at my wedding?" The bride slapped him. "Shut up and hide!" Meanwhile, Lucian shielded his daughter beneath a collapsed table. The little girl trembled. "Daddy, I'm scared." Lucian held her close. His voice softened immediately. "I know, princess." Outside, black armored trucks rolled toward the wedding venue. Not Mafia vehicles. Military grade. Deadly. A symbol was painted on the doors. A silver skull with red eyes. Enzo's face turned grim. Noah rebuilt the Reapers? Even Isabella looked shaken now. What? One Mafia soldier whispered fearfully. The Reapers were wiped out years ago. Enzo answered coldly. Apparently not all of them. Then, suddenly, the front entrance exploded inward. Boom! Smoke filled the hall. And through the fire, a tall man slowly walked inside wearing a black coat. Calm, smiling, terrifying. The guests froze in horror because the man looked completely untouched by the chaos around him.
He stopped directly in the center of the destroyed wedding hall, then removed his black gloves slowly. Lucian stared at him with pure hatred. Noah Kane. The man smiled warmly. Hello, old friend. The little girl peeked from under the table innocently, then pointed at Noah. Daddy, why is the bad man smiling at me? Noah looked directly at her, and his smile widened. Because, he said softly, she has her mother's eyes.
You've gotten soft, he said quietly. Lucian answered coldly. You hide behind bombs and children now. Noah smiled. And yet, here you are. The two men stared at each other like predators, seconds away from killing. Lucian's daughter whispered softly, Daddy, is he the one who hurt Mommy? Silence. Heavy silence. Noah looked directly at the child. Then, yes. The entire hall froze. Even Lucian looked shocked. Isabella screamed angrily and raised her pistol. You monster! But Noah simply laughed. You still don't understand what happened that night. Enzo narrowed his eyes dangerously. Careful what you say next. Noah slowly turned toward him. Why? He asked softly. Afraid the truth will finally come out? The tension became suffocating. Then Noah pointed directly at Lucian's daughter. Elena died because of her. The room exploded. Isabella looked horrified. Lucian's face turned deadly cold. The little girl looked confused. Me? Lucian instantly pulled her behind him. Watch your mouth. But Noah kept talking. Elena discovered something she should never have known. His eyes slowly shifted toward Enzo. She discovered your father was building an empire far bigger than the Mafia. Enzo's soldiers immediately raised their guns. Noah smirked. Drugs. Weapons. Human trafficking. Political assassinations. Gasps gasped in horror. Daniel whispered, Oh my God. Noah continued calmly. Elena wanted out. She begged Lucian to leave the family business forever. Lucian clenched his fists. Because it was true. Noah's smile faded slightly. But then, Elena became pregnant. The little girl hugged Lucian's leg tightly. And suddenly, Noah continued, the Moretti bloodline had an heir. His eyes locked onto the child again. A future queen for the empire. Enzo spoke for the first time. Enough! But Noah ignored him. Elena threatened to expose everything if Enzo tried pulling the child into the Mafia world. The bride covered her mouth in shock. Sophia cried silently. Lucian's breathing became heavier. Because pieces of the past were finally connecting. Noah stepped closer slowly. The night Elena died, his voice lowered. She wasn't protecting herself.
And now, The room felt even more dangerous. Lucian aimed the pistol directly at Victor's head. No more games. Victor coughed blood while laughing weakly. You really think killing me changes anything? He pointed toward Noah. He already won. Lucian frowned. What are you talking about? Victor smiled through the pain, then whispered the worst possible words. The child was never the target. Silence. Lucian's heart dropped instantly. Noah's smile slowly widened. Because Victor was telling the truth.
Lucian looked down at his daughter protectively, then back at Noah. If not her. Noah pointed toward Enzo. Him. Everyone froze. Noah's expression became deadly serious. The bombs are connected to Enzo Moretti's heartbeat. Pure horror spread across the room. One Mafia soldier whispered, "Oh my God." Noah nodded slowly. If Enzo dies, he looked around the wedding hall. Everyone dies with him. The entire room erupted into panic. The cartel soldiers rushed forward. Bang! 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 Lucian fired instantly. 3 men dropped. The ghost exploded into motion. Pure violence. Pure rage. Mafia soldiers and cartel gunmen erupted into a massive firefight across the wedding hall. Guests screamed and ducked for cover. Bullets shattered glass everywhere. But through the chaos, Enzo calmly walked toward Noah. No fear. No hesitation. Noah backed away slowly. You think sacrificing yourself fixes anything? Enzo stopped directly in front of him. No. Then he looked at Lucian one final time. It gives him a chance to be a father. Lucian shouted desperately, "Father!" But it was too late. Enzo grabbed Noah violently and smiled. Then he ripped open his own wound. His heartbeat monitor flatlined instantly. Beep! Lucian's eyes widened in horror. The countdown stopped. 0.0007. Frozen. Then, every explosive light across the building turned green. Disarmed. The hall fell silent. Noah looked shocked. How? Enzo smiled weakly. The override needed my death. Then suddenly, bam! Noah fired one last hidden gun straight into Enzo's stomach. Gasps exploded across the room. Lucian roared in fury and shot Noah directly through the chest. The bullet launched Noah backward through the broken wedding window. Crash! His body disappeared into the burning night outside. Silence followed. Pure silence. Enzo collapsed slowly to the floor. The little girl burst into tears. "Grandpa!" Lucian caught his father before he hit the ground. Blood covered both their hands now. Enzo looked weak, but peaceful. "You were right," he whispered painfully. Lucian leaned closer. "About what?" Enzo looked toward the little girl. Family should have come first. Then, his eyes slowly closed, and the king of the Mafia empire died in his son's arms. The wedding hall remained silent, except for the sound of the wedding hall remained silent, except for the sound of the little girl crying softly. Lucian held his daughter tightly as police lights flashed through the smoke outside. Hours later, The survivors watched the sunrise from outside the destroyed wedding venue. Sophia stood beside the bride silently. Daniel looked completely traumatized. Isabella disappeared before the police arrived. And Lucian walked away holding his daughter's hand, leaving the Mafia world behind, forever. As they reached the road, the little girl looked up at him.
Daddy? Yes, Princess? Are we finally safe now? Lucian stared at the rising sun quietly, then kissed her forehead. Yes. But far away in the shadows, a pair of eyes watched them leave, and a familiar voice whispered, "The ghost story isn't over yet." The end. If this story kept you hooked until the final second, subscribe now for more emotional Mafia storytelling with shocking twists and unforgettable endings.